staring at the fireplace. "Grandma?" Elias said breathlessly. "What happened to my parents?" "The truth, please." Margaret's hands trembled. For a long time, she didn't speak. Finally, she whispered, "Your parents didn't just fight wolves, Elias. They were part of something much bigger." Elias's heart pounded. "What?" "The Order of the Silver Wood," she said. "A secret group sworn to protect the village from dark forces living beyond the forest border." Elias's eyes widened. "Dark forces?" Margaret nodded weakly. "Creatures older than humans. Some shaped like wolves, others far worse. Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because the Order was destroyed the night your parents died. And the commander back then," she paused, fear flickering across her face, "was Commander Thorn." Elias felt the ground slip away beneath him. Thorn had known his parents. Thorn was part of the Order. Thorn knew what happened. And Thorn was hiding something. Margaret grabbed Elias's wrist tightly. "Promise me you won't go into the forest." Elias met her eyes. "I can't promise that." Because deep inside, he knew. The wolves weren't the threat. They were the warning. And something far darker was waiting in the forest. A secret in the trees. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. Something pulled him an instinct he didn't understand. By midnight, he grabbed a lantern, wrapped himself in a cloak, and stepped silently outside. He walked toward the forest. Every step felt like stepping into destiny. The trees loomed tall and ancient, branches twisted like skeletal fingers. The air grew colder, heavier. The silence was unnatural. Then, a twig snapped. Elias halted. From the shadows, the alpha wolf emerged. Its golden eyes glowed like embers. Elias's lantern shook in his hand. "If you wanted to attack me, you would have already." The wolf didn't move. Instead, it slowly turned its head and looked deeper into the forest, as if telling Elias, "Follow me." His breath caught. "Are you trying to show me something?" The wolf stepped forward, looked back, and walked. Elias's legs trembled, but he followed, deeper into the forbidden forest, until he reached a massive stone door covered in ancient runes. Elias gasped, lantern flickering. "What is this?" The wolf stood beside him. Elias slowly reached his hand toward the stone surface. The moment his fingers touched it, the symbols lit up, the ground trembled, and the door slowly opened, revealing a darkness that breathed like something alive. The wolf stepped inside first. Elias swallowed hard. Then he stepped into the darkness too. His life, his identity, everything he thought he knew, was about to change forever. The village of Rimsdale stretched between two mountain ranges, a quiet place where everyone knew everyone, yet no one really looked at each other deeply. People passed one another daily, sharing greetings, gossip, and the silent judgments that floated like invisible dust in the air. In this village lived a boy named Elias Gray, a name that barely echoed anywhere. If the village had a list of important people, Elias would not be near the bottom, he simply wouldn't appear at all. Elias was 15, thin as a reed, always carrying books that were older than him. His hair was messy, his clothes simple, and his voice rarely heard. To most people, he was the kid who sat alone under the old maple tree near the abandoned railway track. Children laughed at him, adults ignored him. "He's too quiet," they'd say. "Not strong enough," others whispered. "Probably won't do much in life." But the truth they didn't know was that Elias carried worlds inside him, worlds he never showed. He lived with his grandmother, Margaret Gray, a woman who had once been fierce but was now weakened by age and illness. Their small wooden house sat on the edge of the forest, where the wind carried loneliness through the cracks. Elias took care of her, cooked for her, washed her, and even read stories to her every night. In those moments, his voice softened, revealing his heart that no one else got to see. Yet, despite his kindness, the world didn't treat him kindly. At school, boys pushed him aside in the hallway. Girls giggled behind his back. Even teachers assumed he was slow simply because he was quiet. Elias never argued, never defended himself. But what people didn't know was that silence was not weakness, it was patience, observation, and hidden power. One cold December morning, everything in Rimsdale began to change, though no one realized it yet. As Elias walked to school, snow crunching under his boots, he heard shouting near the village square. Curious, he followed the sound and found a group of adults surrounding a tall man with a scar across his right cheek. The man wore a military-style coat, boots muddy, and eyes sharp like a hawk's. He introduced himself as Commander Thorn, a name that carried an uneasy weight. "I bring urgent news," Thorn announced, unrolling a map of the region. "The northern wolves have migrated unusually close to the village. They are starving, aggressive, and attacking isolated homes. Your village must prepare." Murmurs rose. Fear spread. Wolves hadn't come near Rimsdale in 20 years. "But how do we defend ourselves?" someone asked. "We need volunteers," Thorn replied. "Strong young men who can help patrol the forest edges." People immediately turned to look at the village's strongest boys, Liam Ward, Marcus Hale, Rowan Stone. They nodded confidently, eager for attention, for heroism. No one even glanced at Elias. Thorn added, "And we need someone to analyze the wolves' movement pattern, someone intelligent." A hush fell. Elias felt his heart pound. He had been studying animal behavior silently for years. He had read every book on wolves, migration patterns, and environmental shifts. He knew he could help. His hand lifted slightly. But before he could speak, Liam Ward laughed loudly. "Well, it won't be Elias, that's for sure. He probably gets scared of puppies." People chuckled. Commander Thorn's eyes scanned the crowd, skipping over Elias as if he were transparent. "We'll assign responsibilities today," Thorn said. "We start at sunset." Elias walked away quietly. Snow continued to fall, burying the footprints behind him, as if the world erased any trace of him. But fate had already chosen him. That night, as the moon cast pale light over the forest, Elias sat by his small window, studying the wolf tracks he had seen earlier on his way home. Something bothered him. The prints weren't just random, they followed a pattern. A strange, unnatural pattern. Then, suddenly, a distant scream echoed through the village. Elias jumped. He ran outside, heart pounding. Villagers rushed toward the sound. Near the old wooden bridge, they found Marcus Hale lying on the ground, bleeding from a wolf attack. Panic erupted. "The wolves, they're closer than we thought," someone yelled. Commander Thorn barked orders. Liam Ward cursed under his breath. Chaos spread. And in the middle of all the panic, Elias quietly knelt beside the injured boy. His fingers touched the wound, examining the bite radius, the depth, the angle. Something clicked in his mind. "These aren't normal wolves," Elias whispered. And he was right. This was the night the village would learn the first lesson. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They see what others miss. But this was only the beginning, because Elias Gray, the boy no one noticed, was about to become the one person the entire village would depend on. Snowflakes drifted through the air like ashes from a dying fire as the villagers carried Marcus to the healer's cottage. His face was ghost pale, his breath shallow, and the fear in everyone's eyes settled like a silent curse over Rimsdale. Liam Ward paced angrily. "Why weren't we warned sooner? Why didn't Commander Thorn predict this?" But Thorn's expression remained calm, too calm. "We underestimated the wolves' hunger," he said. "They're desperate." Elias stood on the edge of the crowd, unnoticed as always. But his mind wasn't on the chaos. It was replaying Marcus's wound, the unusual shape of the bite, and the strange direction of the tracks he had seen earlier that morning. "Something is wrong," Elias murmured to himself, staring at the forest line in the distance, where shadows gathered like silently watching eyes. A memory that never left him. That night, after the villagers returned to their homes, Elias walked slowly toward the abandoned railway track, the one place where he could think freely. The metal rails glistened under the moon, stretching endlessly into darkness. Elias sat where he always did. The cold metal seeped into his bones, but he didn't mind. He opened one of his battered notebooks and began sketching the wolf tracks. Left print slightly deeper, unusually wide stride. Circling pattern near water. Sudden sharp directional change. He frowned. These aren't hungry wolves. They're driven. Driven by what? Before he could think further, the wind shifted. A soft rustling came from the trees behind him. Elias froze. His breath caught. Slowly, he turned. A pair of glowing yellow eyes stared back at him from the darkness. A wolf, but not like any he had ever seen in books. This one was larger, its fur darker, its posture lower and eerily still. It didn't growl. It didn't bare its teeth. It just watched. For a terrifying moment, Elias felt like he was staring into something more intelligent than an ordinary animal. The creature stepped forward once, twice, snow crunching softly. Elias held his breath. The wolf lowered its head, sniffed the air, and then turned around and vanished into the forest like a ghost swallowed by shadows. Elias remained frozen, every nerve trembling. Why didn't it attack? Why did it come so close? And then the realization struck him. It wasn't here to hunt him, it was observing him. The meeting with Commander Thorn. The next morning, Elias walked into the town hall where people gathered around Commander Thorn. Maps lay scattered across a long wooden table. Smoke curled from the fireplace as the room filled with murmurs. Thorn's voice boomed. "We start forest patrols tonight. Anyone weak should stay out of our way." Liam, Rowan, and the other strong boys stood proudly behind him. Elias swallowed, stepped forward, and quietly said, "Sir, I think the wolves are acting strangely. Their movement pattern isn't random. Something is—" Before he could finish, Liam snorted. "Oh, here we go. Elias the encyclopedia is going to teach us about wolves now." Laughter rippled through the room. Elias clenched his fists, but he didn't step back. Commander Thorn turned his cold eyes on him. "Do you have proof, boy?" "Yes," Elias replied. "From the tracks and from what I saw last night." "You saw a wolf?" Someone interrupted, disbelief filling the air. Elias nodded slowly. "It came close, but it didn't attack." "That's impossible," Thorn said sharply. "Wolves don't approach humans unless provoked." "But this one did," Elias insisted. "And it was observing me." The silence broke with Liam's laughter. "Yeah, sure, maybe it wanted to be your friend." More laughter. Commander Thorn sighed impatiently. "Boy, we don't have time for fairy tales. Leave the wolf business to the men." Elias felt the words like a slap. The humiliation pressed on his chest, but he didn't cry. He wasn't a child anymore. He simply nodded, stepped back, and left the room. But as he walked out, he caught a glimpse of Thorn's expression, cold, calculating, and, strangely, worried. Grandmother Margaret's secret. When Elias reached home, he found his grandmother sitting up, her frail hands clutching a blanket. "You're late," she whispered. "I'm sorry," Elias replied, gently sitting beside her. "There was a meeting about the wolves." Her fingers trembled. "The wolves, they're back?" Elias froze. "Back? You mean, you knew?" Margaret closed her eyes, a long sigh escaping her lips. "Elias, there are things about this village you don't know, things hidden before you were born." "What things?" Elias asked, heart pounding. "Your parents?" she whispered weakly. "They didn't die in a storm like people say. They died protecting this village, protecting it from the last wolf uprising." Elias felt the world tilt. "My parents fought wolves?" Margaret nodded. "And something else. Something behind the wolves." Elias's mind raced. Behind the wolves. Driven. Forced. Observed. Nothing made sense anymore. Before he could ask more, Margaret grabbed his hand tightly. "Listen to me. Never underestimate yourself, Elias. You have something inside you, something your parents had, a strength no one sees." Elias felt a tear slip down his cheek. No one had ever spoken to him like that. "You mean I'm not weak?" he whispered. Margaret smiled faintly. "Weak? Elias, you are the only one who can see what others ignore." Her voice softened. "And someday, this village will depend on you." A new threat appears. That night, the patrol began. Liam and the others roamed the outskirts with torches. Commander Thorn stood guard near the frozen lake. Tension filled the air like thick fog. Elias stayed inside, watching from the window. Suddenly, a distant crack. A scream. Shouts. Torches scattering. The wolves were here, again. But this time, Elias noticed something different. The wolves were not moving as a pack. They were moving as if being controlled. And that mysterious big wolf he saw last night appeared again. But it wasn't attacking. It was leading the others. Elias' blood ran cold. "This isn't a wolf attack," he whispered. "It's a warning." But no one else understood. Not yet. The villagers shouted in panic as torches flickered wildly in the wind. Snow flew up in clouds as people raced across the frozen fields. The wolves moved like shadows, fast, silent, coordinated. Too coordinated. Elias watched from his window, breath fogging the glass. His heart hammered painfully inside his chest as he realized something that made his blood run cold. These wolves weren't hunting, they were herding. They pushed the villagers away from the forest, not toward it. Why? Elias grabbed his notebook and ran outside, ignoring the biting cold. The screams grew louder near the frozen lake. The ice cracked beneath running feet. Liam swung a stick desperately as a wolf circled him. "Elias, get inside!" someone yelled. But he didn't listen. He studied the wolves' positions, each one spread out at exact distances, never overlapping paths, as if following a strategy humans didn't understand. Then he saw the silent alpha again, the same dark-furred wolf with glowing golden eyes. It stood on a small hill, watching everything with unnerving intelligence. No growling, no howling. It simply observed, just like last time. Elias whispered, "What are you trying to tell us?" Something clicked in his mind. The wolves were not attacking the villagers, they were protecting something behind the forest. Something or someone. Commander Thorn's strange behavior. "Push them back! Drive them toward the lake!" Commander Thorn shouted, waving a flaming torch. But Elias noticed something odd. Thorn wasn't yelling at the wolves. He was yelling at the villagers. "Get away from the forest!" he barked. Elias' eyes narrowed. Why wasn't Thorn helping drive the wolves off? Why was he so focused on pushing people away from the forest line? Elias stepped closer. "Sir, the wolves aren't trying to attack. They're trying to redirect." "Silence, boy!" Thorn snapped. "Do as you're told!" Liam backed him up. "He's right, Elias. Go home before you get hurt." Elias opened his mouth to argue, but something in Thorn's expression froze him. Fear. Not fear of the wolves. Fear of what was behind the wolves. The wolves' retreat. Suddenly, the alpha wolf lifted its head. Its golden eyes reflected torchlight like burning suns. With one slow step, it gave a low, rumbling breath, not a growl, but something like a command. Every wolf instantly broke formation. They retreated into the forest in perfect synchronization. The villagers stared in shock. What just happened? They left? No wolves retreat like that. But Elias wasn't surprised. The wolves weren't retreating, they were repositioning. To guard something. Or someone. Commander Thorn clenched his jaw. His reaction wasn't relief. It was frustration. The forbidden part of the forest. The next morning, the village buzzed with nervous whispers. People tried to explain the wolves' behavior, but nothing made sense. Elias, however, felt like puzzle pieces were sliding into place. He hurried through the village square, clutching his notebook. Before he reached the library, Rowan Stone stepped in front of him. He was a big teenager with broad shoulders and a cruel grin. "Hey, Elias," he teased, "heard you attacked the wolves with your notebook last night." The boys behind him laughed. Elias swallowed. "I was trying to help." "We don't need help from someone who can't even lift a stick," Rowan said, pushing him slightly. Elias didn't push back. He just whispered, "One day, you'll realize you're wrong about me." Rowan smirked. "Doubt it." But just then, a voice echoed sharply across the street. "Leave him alone." Everyone turned. It was Commander Thorn. Rowan instantly stepped aside. "Sir, we were just—" "Get moving," Thorn snapped. The boys scattered like scared mice. Elias stared at Thorn, confused. Why defend him now? Thorn approached him slowly. "You're observant, boy. Too observant. Stay away from that forest." Elias frowned. "Why? What's in there?" Thorn's eyes hardened. "Nothing you need to know. And nothing your parents could handle either." Elias froze. "My parents?" Thorn cursed under his breath as if realizing he'd said too much. Then he stormed away. Elias stood there trembling. Why did Thorn mention my parents? What does he know about them? What is he hiding in the forest? And why are the wolves protecting it? Grandmother Margaret's warning. That evening, Elias rushed home. His grandmother sat on her rocking chair, staring at the fireplace. "Grandma?" Elias said breathlessly. "What happened to my parents?" "The truth, please." Margaret's hands trembled. For a long time, she didn't speak. Finally, she whispered, "Your parents didn't just fight wolves, Elias. They were part of something much bigger." Elias's heart pounded. "What?" "The Order of the Silver Wood," she said. "A secret group sworn to protect the village from dark forces living beyond the forest border." Elias's eyes widened. "Dark forces?" Margaret nodded weakly. "Creatures older than humans. Some shaped like wolves, others far worse. Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because the Order was destroyed the night your parents died. And the commander back then," she paused, fear flickering across her face, "was Commander Thorn." Elias felt the ground slip away beneath him. Thorn had known his parents. Thorn was part of the Order. Thorn knew what happened. And Thorn was hiding something. Margaret grabbed Elias's wrist tightly. "Promise me you won't go into the forest." Elias met her eyes. "I can't promise that." Because deep inside, he knew the wolves weren't the threat, they were the warning. And something far darker was waiting in the forest, a secret in the trees. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. Something pulled him an instinct he didn't understand. By midnight, he grabbed a lantern, wrapped himself in a cloak, and stepped silently outside. He walked toward the forest. Every step felt like stepping into destiny. The trees loomed tall and ancient, branches twisted like skeletal fingers. The air grew colder, heavier. The silence was unnatural. Then, a twig snapped. Elias halted. From the shadows, the alpha wolf emerged. Its golden eyes glowed like embers. Elias's lantern shook in his hand. If you wanted to attack me, you would have already. The wolf didn't move. Instead, it slowly turned its head and looked deeper into the forest, as if telling Elias, "Follow me." His breath caught. "Are you trying to show me something?" The wolf stepped forward, looked back, and walked. Elias's legs trembled, but he followed, deeper into the forbidden forest, until he reached a massive stone door covered in ancient runes. Elias gasped, lantern flickering. "What is this?" The wolf stood beside him. Elias slowly reached his hand toward the stone surface. The moment his fingers touched it, the symbols lit up, the ground trembled, and the door slowly opened, revealing a darkness that breathed like something alive. The wolf stepped inside first. Elias swallowed hard. Then he stepped into the darkness too. His life, his identity, everything he thought he knew, was about to change forever.